All right, welcome to another episode of Wall Street Rundown. I'm your co-host Billy. I got Wale with me. What's good, Wale?
What's good? How you doing?
Man, the market has been doing some weird stuff and crazy stuff. So we've seen a couple of drops, a couple of days ago, but now we're seeing the market move a lot higher today. Also, we saw that the S&P was up 0.7%, Nasdaq was up like 1.2%, the Dow Jones was up 0.2%. The Russell kind of got smacked again. I mean, we kind of know why. The whole rate and stuff is still it's not helping them at all. So they're down 0.2%. But overall, man, we saw a lot of drivers. Like we saw Apple kind of shot up a little bit today. We saw a bunch of other ones that shot up, but then we saw something like AMD and SMCI kind of like just got smacked because of disappointing results and concerns about chips export and restrictions and all that stuff. So overall, it's been a week full of earnings, but at the same time, it was mixed reviews when it comes to earnings. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, let's get your take on this week, man. What you seen? What do you think about all the stuff that's happening?
Yeah, one of the things that I listened to today, AMD is supposed to be creating or has a chip supposedly that is supposed to rival the Blackwell chip from NVIDIA, and be able to do what NVIDIA does, but at a cheaper price point. But based on even that information, the stock did not do too well.
They're kind of late to the game, man. Like, I don't care
Man,
how good your chip is. You need to provide something different, but
Yeah,
they're kind of
kind
late
of.
to the game.
Yeah, kind of late to the game. And then SMC, I didn't get all the details behind that one, but they um they kind of flopped pretty big. I think they were down with what, 18? Let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah, 18% today.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but there was a couple names that did really, really well, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
find out. There was this networking company.
Arista.
Yeah, Arista.
I think it was
They
up like 17% or something like that. It was up crazy.
So one of the things I always tell people is when we think about the whole AI ecosystem, right? Arista plays in the networking of the chips. They don't make the chips, but they create the network that allows the chips to talk to each other.
Yep.
So that's another area of the whole AI story that you can also investigate. I didn't see their numbers per se, but I saw the reaction after they reported earnings, and that stock went fine. So, I always keep reminding people that there's so many different layers to the whole AI story. And as you sort of dig deeper into finding names that are sort of kind of under the radar, who talks about Arista, right? Everybody talks about
Yeah.
NVIDIA and the chip
Yeah.
makers and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But there's some diamonds in the rough that if you really dig deep and do your research, you might find some really good investment opportunities. So just
Yep.
wanted to point that out.
Well, speaking of Risa, have you seen Shopify? Shopify was up like 20% for the day. Like that thing shot up like a cannon. You know what I mean?
I think
That
that's
was
the
that was
most,
crazy.
I think now they're the most valuable Canadian company.
Yep. Yep. Their revenue was up 31% year over year. They're up to like $2.6 billion. Well, the
Crazy.
expectation, beating the analyst expectation was 2.55 billion. So Shopify is out here, man. They're making
Yeah.
money, you know.
And I know since COVID, you found a lot of people transitioning into entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
And from what I hear, they make it really easy to set up like a shop where you can
Yep.
sell product and all that stuff. And they can help you run different things, process payments. So man, shout out to Shopify, man.
Yep, yep. They did some crazy stuff, man. That's some wild, wild, wild numbers. But overall, man, like the market's gonna upbeat because all this crazy earnings optimism, and especially in the AI investments. But let's talk a little bit about this crazy Trump's announcing 100% tariffs on semiconductors. So unless if you not paying attention at all, President Donald Trump declared 100% tariff on all imported semiconductor chips unless the companies importing them are actively manufacturing it or have committed to manufacturing in the US. So, what does that mean? So, we look at like major players like Apple, Nvidia, TCMC, Intel, those that have US manufacturing plant will be exempt. I mean, we talked about Intel a lot. We
Hmm.
don't think the government is going to let Intel go down. So, I think this is actually good news for Intel. TSM is already kind of we talked about a lot about the Arizona plant that's coming. So there's
Hmm.
probably going to be a little bit excluded from that too, right? So Yeah, so let's talk a little
So
bit about
so
that,
there's an
man.
so there's an exclusion. So
Yep.
if you manufacture chips in the United States, you get an exclusion. Huh.
Yep.
So that's probably why they built those two big old factories in
Yep.
Arizona.
Yep. Yep.
Gotcha.
And then
Gotcha.
Apple out of nowhere announced what $100 billion or something like that to start building plants in the US. So
Oh,
yeah.
or they increased it by $100 billion, I think
Yep.
it was. Yeah.
Yep. So they're gonna. So again, they're probably playing into the camp was like, hey, we have stuff here, so don't give us those taxes or tariffs or whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah,
So who produces most of their chips outside the US is my question.
that's
Samsung,
Samsung. Let me
because
see.
Samsung is a Korean company. I don't know if they have any production in the US. I could be wrong though. But
So
I don't
which
think
companies?
Samsung is traded on the United States stock market though. I don't think so.
Let's look it up outside of the US.
Yeah, I don't think Samsung is traded on the domestic stock exchange.
So surprisingly, some of those companies we mentioned, Apple already. I mean, we already know Apple produce some of their chips abroad, right? AMD also does the same thing. Nvidia, it looks like they are also outside the US in where the chips are produced in Taiwan and South Korea. Qualcomm, Taiwan, South Korea, and China. Broadcom, Taiwan, Singapore. Marvel, Taiwan, Singapore. Even Google's chip is also produced in South Korea. Amazon produced some of their chips in Taiwan. Um,
Hmm.
let's
I'm trying
see.
I'm trying to see who doesn't produce anything in the United States. I'm trying to think so I can find a short a
Yeah.
short position.
TSM, Taiwan, Samsung, South Korea, MediaTek, Taiwan, SMCIC, China, Global Foundries, US, and UAE.
Yeah, Global Foundries is up big in the after hours, I saw.
Hmm.
So let me go
So
back to my
they produce here in the United Arab Emirates.
yeah, let me go to Global. Yeah, Global Foundries is up 8% after hours.
Hmm.
Micron is up 4.4% after hours. Texas Instruments is up 2.3%. Broadcom is kind of flat. TSM is up almost 3% in the after hours.
Nuts, man. How about Intel?
Intel is up 0.7971%.
It's crazy.
And then yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, Global Foundries, I know that's a US based company. They are up pretty
Hmm.
big. Yeah,
Yep.
8%. Woo, what a move.
So there you go. The sad thing about those things is like some of those news always comes right after the market close, right? So it's like
Hmm.
unless if you're in position or you like kind of already know what's happening behind the scenes, it's
Yeah,
hard for you to really capture those moves and stuff. So
I'm sure
yeah.
Pelosi knew.
Oh man, I'll be interested to see if she got a position or not.
I'm sure.
Let's move on to Palantir's earning, man. I mean, Palantir, like what do you think about Palantir as a company, first of all? I mean, I see some mixed reviews out there about their numbers and all that stuff, but their partnership with the government seems to just give them like a boost every single time, you know? So yeah,
Yeah. So Planeteer hit a what, an all-time high today of what, 180?
180.
180 before pulling back a little bit. They had
Yep.
what, blowout earnings. They hit revenue for the quarter for the first time of $1 billion.
$1 billion for the first time ever.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is, from my understanding, their biggest customer is the United States government. And as long as the government sees value in their technology and continues to commit to spending on that technology, especially, I don't think that defense spending is something that the US ever plans on cutting. Like
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I don't think that that's ever going to happen. And to me, as long as that's the case, I mean, they seem to be the 800-pound gorilla in that space right now.
Yep. Yep.
Because cybersecurity and security metrics and all that stuff that they provide to the government to me is crucial.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, man,
And they have their hands in everything too. Like Palantir is everywhere. I mean, they're in the healthcare world, they're in the finance. in supply chain, manufacturing, energy, like they have their hands everywhere. You know what I mean? And then you have, of course, the national security, logistic planning, intelligence, and all that stuff. So they're not just like, I mean, the government is their biggest customer, but they have their hands everywhere else. You know?
I mean, this was a $66 stock on April 7th.
Yep. Yep. That thing is up what?
$66 stock.
Almost 200%. It is past
Crazy.
200%. God dang.
Yeah,
Today,
great.
it hit
Crazy.
200% today from April. That's
This
ridiculous.
was a $66 stock in April. I didn't know they
No.
dropped that low. I had no
Uh-huh.
idea it went that
But
low.
you gotta go back to the beginning of the year to see how much were there. You're gonna be really mad at yourself.
Let me see year-to-date chart. Let me look at that up real quick.
You're gonna be really mad at yourself.
63. Oh Lord. $63 stock at the low. Beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
year.
Yep.
Wow.
And if you look at last year, there were $20 stock. Yep. It's crazy, right? Oh man,
Dang.
I know somebody. He posted it today. He I know somebody who has a $17 average price on Palantir, and he has over 1,000 contracts. Not 1,000, a thousand
Shares.
shares, thousands of shares. And
Dang.
he's like, don't even let me post how many contracts I had in calls and stuff on them. It's like, you nuts. How?
Sheesh. Imagine being an early investor. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But
He just made a lot
Palantir,
of money.
man. And one of the things I did say though was remember when we were going into 2025, I said the two sectors that are probably going to be the most dominant are going to
Mm-hmm.
be financials and software
Yep.
because they're pretty much tariff proof. Like financials don't pay tariffs, right? They
Mm-hmm.
basically, as long as the economy is good, they get to do a lot of business.
Right.
And software companies don't have physical goods that they move through domestic borders. So Palantir is one of those names that has done really well. And if there's another software name that I'm looking at that has done really well this year, is also I've been looking at CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike was trading at around 340-ish at the beginning of the year, dropped to 298 and then hit a high of 517. So
Yep.
yeah, there's some software names out there that have done. I mean, Shopify is, I think, considered a software
Yep.
company because
Yep.
they don't ship physical goods
They don't
either.
ship nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
So crazy.
But it's interesting, man, to see like those companies move like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially we talked about this. If you can find those dominant and rough, following whatever you need to follow, it you get something like Palantir, you get something like Nvidia, you get something like Oklo. Speaking of Oklo, hit an all time high. I mean, that's our baby, man. I feel like we talked about Oklo all the time. Oklo hit an all time high. Was that today? Or was that
I
yesterday?
think yesterday.
All-time high yesterday. I mean, that thing shot out like if you look at that chart, I was like, damn, somebody poured some gasoline on that thing. It just shot up like crazy.
Shot out a cannon.
Yep.
And yeah, just going back to what last August, around this time
Mm-hmm.
last year, right? We
Mm-hmm.
were talking about
Mm-hmm.
Aqua when it was at what, $5?
Yep.
Now
Yep.
it's an $85 stock. Take that, Planeteer.
Yep. Yep. And literally, was it like 2 weeks ago? We're like, oh, it's sitting at like I think $50 or $60. And I was like, this is a really good place. For
Yeah, I
those of you
think
who keep asking,
shout out
yeah.
to my man Shane for posting this in our group. He said uranium energy. Yeah, so US proposally fast tracks plans for nuclear reactors. So you had a lot of these names out there like UEC,
UEC, that thing
um,
popped up too.
Oklo, SMR,
Mm-hmm.
NNE, the nuclear stocks. I think it was yesterday. They all had a
They
really
all ran
great
up.
day.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we had yeah, if you've been, I mean, you could have, even if you got into Oklo like at 20,
You're still,
you're still
you're
sitting
still,
pretty.
yep,
Because I think
still
for the
sitting pretty.
year, Oklo's up like what, 200%?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we talked about was that legislation and that would be a hurdle, but it seems
The
that's
clear,
getting like fast tracked.
that's very, very fast track.
Like they
And
the government is really on board with this.
yep. And I'll be honest, man. I feel like all the nuclear names, it's still early, man. Like Alclo at $80, I think it's still a steal for me at least. Like I still
Mm.
think it's still a good place to buy. But um, I mean, again, the same thing we talked about. Like this is probably going to be a 2 to 3 year type of thing. But now you see, it's not. It hasn't even taken a year. It took like less than a year, and it's just like already
And
hit
this is
past our levels.
and
You know,
this is pre-revenue. That means
pre-revenue,
they don't have any revenue.
right?
So they don't even have a working product yet.
Yep.
So now there's risk in that though, because if anything, basically they are being granted a long leash based on potential and future promises, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
So
there's
they have.
risk in that. You have to understand there is risk in that.
Yep.
As long as they deliver on those promises, right? And I think from what I hear, their reactors are supposed to go live in 2027. So
Yep.
we still
Yep.
have a whole year before anything happens, which is why, as an investor, it's good to get on those earnings calls and listen. Are there any hiccups that I'm hearing on this earnings call that
Mm-hmm.
might prompt me to get out early and maybe wait for a better entry?
Yep.
So for
Yep.
me, my cost basis is $6.11. So I've got, I think, a stop loss set somewhere around like $50.
Mm-hmm.
Now I would be giving back a good chunk, but I wouldn't be giving back everything.
Yep. Yep.
So if
Exactly.
I see something dramatic happen to the stock that it drops like $50, I mean, it drops like, drops to like 50, I might take some profits and then, reassess. But the
Yep.
last
Yep.
couple earnings calls, nothing has changed their trajectory of what we should be expecting going into 2027.
Right, right. But I think also like a lot of investors are thinking like us, right? It's like this is a long term
It's
thing,
a
and
long-term
so
thing. Yeah.
even if they pour money into it right now, it's still fine because they know it's a long term investment. It's not a short term investment. But
Yeah. The
um,
runway for nuclear to me is
oh,
very long.
yep, yep, yep. Disney. I know you mentioned Disney a little bit. Revenue was up $23.6 billion. I was like, who still be out here watching Disney?
And the
Who
crazy
is
thing
out here
with
watching Disney?
the crazy thing with Disney is streaming turned a profit. Let me look at my
I
notes.
never thought I would see the day, but I think that some of the acquisition that they have done, I think it helped them out.
Mm,
It helped them out a lot. So yeah,
yeah, 346 million in profit in streaming.
yep,
Park revenues was up, so that's really good. But the one thing that they're still losing on is their studio because they
mm-hmm.
had a couple flops at the box office. Even though Lilo and Stitch was a hit,
Yep,
the studio lost $21 million in the quarter. So,
um,
and then you've got the NFL buying a 10% stake into ESPN,
yep,
and now ESPN owns the rights to Red Zone and also to NFL Network. So
mhm,
they're pivoting very heavily into the NFL.
yep,
And to
yep,
me, I think that's a good idea because when you look at all the three major sports, I think NFL still is king when it
yep,
comes to revenue, you know, fan interactions, fantasy football, branding. The NFL brand is Teflon.
yep, yep, yep.
So I think that's a good move for them. I still don't know why. Now I don't know if they will. They haven't spun ESPN as a completely separate company.
I don't know if they will though.
Yeah, people have been saying that they would, but
I don't know if they
I
will.
think Bob Iger has different plans, but
Yeah,
I think being in partnership with the NFL, I think that's a really good it's a good start.
yeah. But I also think like a lot of those companies, like Disney and HBO and Apple and all the stuff, like going direct to consumer, I think is helping some of those companies stay up. So
Mm,
if you think about it, back in the day, like I mean, Disney, they still you still can still go on cable and still watch Disney, right?
yeah,
But going direct to consumers, like it helps them eliminate so many obstacles. Like you don't have to have airtime, you don't have to buy like time on the network or something like that. So you just download the app and the money directly goes to Disney. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing. The one threat that I see for them is probably going to be Netflix. I don't know what Netflix is going to figure out the whole streaming live streaming thing with sports and all those different things. I know they've been playing around a little bit. They did NFL here, they did boxing here. They do a couple of things here and there, but I think that's probably going to be the biggest threat to companies like Disney and all that. So, but they haven't figured it out yet. We'll see.
Yeah, Disney has been a very choppy comeback story. So Disney's
Mm-hmm.
another name that was kind of like left for dead a couple years ago. So if we go back
Yep.
to 2023, the stock was down to about $78. Then they had a pretty good month in January 2024, when the market was running. Then they dropped again, and then they dropped again this year to about $80, I think it was. And now they are on a pretty good trajectory. This month they've consolidated so far, but will they get back to that high near 203? We will see. But that's just one of those things. Like, Disney's one of those companies where you're kind of betting on a comeback story. Like, very good brand, ran into some trouble, kind of left for dead. But now, because I remember Bob Iger had to come back. But
Yep.
with new leadership, they're pivoting to different businesses, different ventures. You're starting to see some momentum back in the stock, and that's the same thing that I'm hoping for with Intel, right?
Mhm.
You know, good brand. They just got to shed some fat, got to change the vision, restructure the business, new leadership, and then hopefully we get a nice turnaround story. Same thing with, you got the Nike's kind of also on the
Nike.
same, yes, also
Yes.
on the same trajectory as
Yes.
well, where they're trying to, get back to their glory days, so to
Yep.
speak.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. I mean, there's some really good companies out there. They just like they just have to figure it out. They
they got to
have to
figure it
figure it
out.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, got to figure
Yeah.
it out. That's why you got to jump
Um,
on those earnings calls sometimes.
you got to listen to them, man. And then the share buybacks hit $1 billion in purchases this quarter, and they're aiming for 3 billion for the year. So
Jeez.
they are here. That's crazy. The one interesting thing I said, I was like, they're actually gonna get rid of Hulu. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, they're selling their stake in Hulu?
No, they're not selling. They're gonna combine it and just merge everything into Disney instead of Hulu being a separate thing. And they just
Oh,
they're
because
gonna.
they're a majority shareholder of Hulu, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Yeah,
So.
they really they putting all the chips at the middle of the table.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is gonna be a good move for them. But like I said, a threat is always lurking in the back end, right?
With
So
Netflix, yeah.
Netflix is always lurking in the back, and Netflix is always they seem to always be one step ahead of the game. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Like, Netflix has really transformed its business. I mean,
Yep.
I mean, this is why it's always good innovation, man. If you don't innovate, you get
Mhm.
left behind.
Yep.
Like, you
Quickly.
get left behind quickly.
Yep.
Like, just look at all of the new things that Netflix has done, like going from live sports and, you know, pay-per-view events, and, the
Mm-hmm.
content that they're
Mm-hmm.
getting into. I mean, man,
Yep.
you got to
Yep.
really be thinking outside the box to really, really stay abreast to what investors want and
Yep.
keeping up with the changes in the market, man. This is why I couldn't be a marketing major. I'm not that smart, and I don't have creative ideas.
You always gotta be bold, man. You gotta come up with like
Sometimes you
crazy,
got to be
crazy
bold.
ideas. You
Sometimes you
know
got
what I
to be
mean?
bold. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what Disney does and how they can make this story a comeback and see where they can come back. It looks like they pulled back a little bit today also, and then they came back up again. So we'll see where they end up. Yeah, they pulled back today after that earnings. Yep. But I know it's almost 30 minutes to the hour. Let's go ahead and do the weekly stock review, Wale. I know you have one prepared for us today to go through, and I'm excited about this one, man, because I like this segment. One thing I want you guys to pay attention to is like pay attention to not only the numbers, but how you can do this by yourself. Like you don't have to always wait for us to show you how to break down a company, looking at income sheet balance and all that stuff. Like you can literally do this by yourself. So as Wale is going through this, just pay attention to how what numbers he's looking at and how he's explaining it and what makes sense or not doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Give me
So
one quick second. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Okay, so we are looking at ASML. We're going to be doing a deep dive, looking at the fundamentals of the company and just going through some important metrics that you can look at to tell whether a business is growing, contracting, is it a good buy, what are analysts saying, and all kinds of stuff. So let me jump into this one. So, all right, so let's look at their business model. So ASML is the world's only EU photo lithography system manufacturer. Now, people are like, what the heck is EUV photo lithography systems? So basically, all of the semiconductor manufacturers, right, that create the chips, they're the ones that build the chips. This is part of the technology that helps inscribe some of the really, really high level details onto the chip surface. And ASML is the only one in the world that has a machine that can do that. They're the only one. They have a real monopoly in this business, which is crazy. Like no other company in the world has the machines that can do this. They also do DUV systems, metro, and then software tools, metrology and software tools. A lot of their revenue comes from the machine. So they build these huge machines that help chip manufacturers manufacture their chips. They do service contracts, upgrades, and stuff like that. So when you talk about moat, like, do they have any competition in their main business? The answer is no. They don't have anybody that competes with them in this EUV photolithography space. Nobody. And they're in the Netherlands. So they're a European country. They're not a US based country. So look at their customers, the big chip manufacturers, TSM, Intel, and Samsung are three of their key clients. Most of their revenue includes hardware, software, and services. Minimal competition in the EUV space. Nikon and Canon, they are way, 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 way behind in this business. Now, will it stay that way? I don't know, but as of recently, no one can compete with them in the EUV business. Nobody comes close. All right. So let's look at their revenue growth. So from 2019 to 2024, they grew their revenue from 13.24 billion to 30.58 billion in 2024. So you can see very consistent revenue growth as a business. And yeah, very, very consistent revenue growth. And I think for 2025, they're estimated to hit 35.0 billion in revenue, which is approximately about a 27% year over year growth. So, growing revenue as a company, very, very good to have that. Because again, that's one of the main things that investors look at is, are you selling more of what you produce? Margins. So gross margins, 52.5%, which is up from 48.6% back in 2019. So very good growing margins as a business. Operating margins, 34.8%, which is up from 29.0%. Again, you see operating margins are growing. And then also net margins are growing. So 29.3%, which is up from 25.4%. So again, good metrics where you see gross margins increasing, operating margins increasing, and net margin increasing year over year. So very good metrics on that front as well. Free cash flow. This is one of my favorite metrics. 9.10 billion in 2024. So free cash flow again is money that they get to use to reinvest in the business. Their peak free cash flow amount was 2020. They had 9.95 billion in free cash flow. Actually, no. Yeah, 2022, and they dipped to 3.29 billion. That was the lowest free cash flow that they had. One of the things where if you see a very, very big dip in free cash flow, one of the things you sometimes want to take a look at is did they use the money to pay down debt or are they reinvesting into the business? So if you see a big dip like that in free cash flow, because if I'm not mistaken, when did that dip happen? Let me see. Finance activities, net free cash flow. Yeah, I think that might have happened between 2020, yeah, 2021 to 2023. So they had a pretty big dip in free cash flow. I did not comb through what caused that, but when you see a dip like that, sometimes it's big investments or sometimes they use the money to pay down debt. Valuation, so trailing PE 22 to 25 times, which is not terrible. And then forward PE or price to earnings ratios in the mid 20s. So not a very expensive company from a valuation standpoint. Um, is it cheap? No, but is it super expensive? I'd also say no. So I'd say it's kind of in the middle. So premium valuation is justified by the growth and their monopoly position. So again, remember, in the business that they're in, they don't have any competitors. So if you need EUV technology, you have one company to go to, and that is ASML. So that moat in their business justifies their valuation based on what some analysts are saying. Balance sheet. So they've got about $8 billion in cash. Now, this is the one thing that I like about this company. Total debt, $4.8 billion. So technically, they could pay off all their debt with their cash. That's a really, really good thing about this business is they have very, very low debt, like very low. So their debt to equity ratio is really good. Debt to free cash flow is also really good. So when you see businesses that have low debt like that, it's another really, really good thing about the company. Now, another thing with this company that's not in the slide is that a lot of their numbers are in euros, right? Right now, the euro is stronger than the dollar. If that ever flips, that could hurt the business a little bit because of the currency exchange rate. But right now, since the euro is still superior than the dollar, you don't really have to worry about that. But I just want to put that out there because if you ever look at their balance sheet as a European company, they technically report their money in euros. TSM is also the same thing as well. They report in a different currency as well. Operating margins and trends. So operating margins have been growing consistently for 5 years, which is really, really, really good. Q1 2025 operating margin was 35.14%, high efficiency and scale. So if you look at the trend of their operating margin, it's like, okay, as a business, does your main core business as you operate, is that growing, right? And then um, when you look at ASML, you can kind of see that they've got a pretty good trend going as well. You can find a lot of their data also too on like Market Watch and Yahoo Finance, where you can kind of look at how they've been growing year over year. So, pretty consistent growth as a company. All right. And then let's go to slide 9. Analyst rating. So consensus buy from most analysts across the board. Average target price is $914. Right now, the stock is trading at 696.15. Now, they did hit a high before earnings. ASML. Let me go to their chart real quick. They took a pretty steep dive. Um, the stock hit a high of $1,110 way back in July of 2024. They have dropped pretty significantly since then, and they dropped at their last earnings call from 826 to about 690. Now, if you listen to the earnings call, the biggest thing that came up in their earnings call that's hurting their business right now is tariffs. As a European company, tariffs have now been implemented on European companies. So they have to factor that into their business. So that is something that is affecting their margins, and they are accounting for that. So I don't know how long or how detrimental it will be to their overall business, mainly because, again, they don't have any competition. And as companies like TSM, Intel, and Samsung, if they start to need to produce more chips and they need to order more machines from ASML that could help their business. But I don't know if they're quite there yet. I'm assuming, I don't know if this is factored in. I'm assuming TSM might need to order the machines to put into their Arizona plant. I don't know if they're there yet. Maybe they have orders and they have not been fulfilled or things like that. So that's a
Right.
story that I don't really know about. But again, being a business that is has a monopoly on their business, I think that's a good thing for the business long term. So again, key takeaways from here: EUV technology. They are the 800-pound gorilla in the business. They don't have any competitors as of now. They've got strong growth, cash flow, premium pricing, but risk, geopolitics, export bans, and cyclical chip orders. So those are the things that you have to. Tariffs are the big thing against them, because I think a lot of where they produce their machines and they produce their business is overseas. If I'm not mistaken, let me go back to the countries that were listed. Yeah, company operates in Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, China, rest of Asia, Netherlands, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and then in the United States. But as you can see, a lot of their business is overseas. And if you look at tariff policy, everybody's getting smacked right now. So all these countries got a tariff. So just have to factor that in. That's the biggest risk to their business, from a stock price standpoint. So yeah, that's all I got.
That was a nice breakdown, man. That's a nice breakdown. I think overall the company, they have a really good structure.
Yes,
And I mean, long term, I mean, they hit a high of what, 826 back in,
1100 in 2024.
yep. So this they got
There
they
might be
got
some there might be some value there. There
yeah,
might be some value there.
I honestly think so. I honestly think so.
Yeah, there
And
might be
plus, you
some.
guys got to know, like some of those tariffs are temporary, right? So it's like I know we talk about like some of the tariffs that affect some of those companies.
Mhm.
We all been aware there's some zigzag when it comes to tariff that the administration always says today's tariff, tomorrow he gonna be like, oh okay, this company decided they're gonna build a small factory in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. We're gonna give them a break. You know what I mean? So it's like
Mhm.
it's gonna happen. So I think the whole tariff on semiconductors, you guys got to think about it. There's always a reason why the administration comes up with that, and then at this point, I think it's just leverage. You
Yeah, I
can
think it's
leverage
I
this
think it's
tariff.
yeah, I think it's
Yep.
leverage as well. And I'll have to listen to the earnings call. Maybe I can get some clip notes. Some companies may be able to navigate this.
Yeah.
And again, they're not a B2C company.
Right.
They're a B2B company.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
they might have a little bit more leeway in maybe raising prices or, doing what they need to do because again, yeah, this is how I think of this stock. They are having trouble now because of tariffs. But if I look 5 years or 10 years from now, as long as nobody jumps into the EUV technology space,
You're good.
again, you got literally one company. Like they have a chokehold on this technology. No
Yep.
one, no one else does it. And
Yep.
that technology is super, super, super crucial to chip manufacturing. Like if ASML goes belly up, to be honest with you, the whole AI story dies.
Yep. Yep.
The whole AI story dies. So two companies that are essential in my mind to the AI story, ASML is one, and then TSM because of the manufacturer. So you ever get a chance to kind of get down, dig into the rabbit hole, you start to find some of these non-headline names out there that might have some value,
Yeah.
long term. So, but I will say the tariff thing is something that they definitely have to get over that hurdle and navigate. So we'll have to see if they can do better next quarter.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And I know we keep talking about AI, but I also want you guys to always keep quantum computing in the back of your mind also. Like
Hmm.
that's coming up really, really fast. I mean, I think we went from, oh, this possibly gonna take 10 years. I think we're down to like 8 years now. I won't be surprised by next year if we're down to like 5 or 4 years that
Mm.
quantum computing is not that far from being a reality. So again, start keeping an eye on those and start. Maybe that'll probably be a good place to look for any gems for the next couple of years, for the next 5, 6 years. That might be you might be able to find the next Nvidia within the quantum computing world also. So I just keep an eye on that one. Now, quantum computing will have effect on everything, right? Also, same way AI does, healthcare, finance, cybersecurity, anything that you can think of. Quantum computing is going to have a hand on it. So keep an eye on that and do some research on that one also. But great breakdown on the ASML. I think it definitely has a long way to go.
Yeah, I think there's value there. I think there's
Mhm.
value in ASML. So I
Yep,
will put that on my list of stocks that I may want to hold long
yep,
term.
yep. All right, well, let's move on to next week or this week economic calendar. What's going on this week? We don't have a lot of stuff, honestly.
Nah, not this week. This is as far as economics are, I mean, it's
There's
been
not a
it's been
lot of
pretty it's been
stuff.
pretty slow.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been pretty slow.
Um, we have, the Fed speaker. I think they're still talking some more. Okay, so I gotta ask you about this then. I know who somebody resigned from the Fed speaker. I forgot who it was, right? So
Mm,
they're probably gonna get replaced. And now we all know there's possibly somebody already gonna be there when Jerome leaves. And when Jerome leaving, it's February of
May, I
next year,
think.
May
May.
of next year.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how the decisions are going to be made in terms of like rate cut and all these different things. You know what I mean? Hopefully, maybe by that time we get there, there's probably already a couple of rate cuts, so we don't have to worry about any zigzag in the market. But I just think it's going to be an interesting time to have somebody who the administration appointed to be Fed Reserve. You know what I mean? So
Like are they really gonna be independent or are they just gonna be a
I
puppet?
don't think so. I don't think they're going to be independent. I honestly don't. Unless if they got somebody like Jerome again, who they thought they can manipulate, and then Jerome
And
turns out
then
to be like, "Hey, look, no,
yeah.
this is more important than me trying to obey your emotions and stuff." But we'll see.
I I actually heard our man who's usually pretty bearish, or not bearish, he's more of a hawk. Neil Kashkari was like, yeah, we should cut rates. I was like, oh wow, he's on board to cut rates. But I don't think he's a voting member. I think
Mm,
he will be next year. So Powell he won't be Fed chair, but I still think he'll be on the
he'll be
board.
on
So
the
he'll
road.
probably
Yep,
still gets a vote.
yep,
But I think we're going to get a September rate cut. I think that we might get one rate cut in September. I
yep.
think
I think so too.
that jobs data from last week that might have been what we needed
Yep.
to get a rate cut. Now, I will say this though. I don't know if that helps the long end of the yield curve.
Mm,
We don't know. We'll have to see how the long end. Now the short end. So your savings rates are going to probably go down. Maybe your credit card interest rates will start to go down. Your car loans might start to go down. But will mortgages go down? We don't know.
we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. So that's gonna be interesting to see. Hopefully we'll see. We'll see what happens in September. We'll see what happens in September. I might just get some calls on IWM just to be.
Right before the announcement,
We'll see, man.
and
But
that may not be a bad play.
yeah, yeah, because they've been getting beat. They've been getting beat like big time.
They were the leader yesterday. I don't know what happened. Today they didn't do too bad. They didn't do too bad.
Yeah,
Holding that
but
220
that
level, but
220, yeah, that 220
yeah,
level is just sitting there.
yeah,
So
just holding that so far.
yeah, but the way he closed today, he closed really nicely. So we'll see. Maybe you'll get a No, I wouldn't even hit yesterday's high. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes today, tomorrow. I mean, with that being said, man, we don't have anything else for this week. I don't see anything that's worth noting. I know next week we have CPI on August 12th. So keep an eye on that one. Then we have PPI on August 14th. And then one thing that's probably want to pay attention to probably the monthly retail sales on August 15th, just to see how
Okay,
consumer
yeah.
spending is looking like.
Mhm.
But other than that, there's no major headline except for those three that I can see. So, well, the quarterly household debt and credit report is coming out. So I'll be interested to see what that
You know
looks
what's
like.
funny? I
Mm.
keep hearing like consumer has debt has hit an all-time high. Debt has hit an all-time high. Debt has hit an all-time high. The 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 caveat, this is the caveat that I always have to put out there is not all debt is bad. So if it's
Yeah.
credit card debt hitting new highs, that's usually not good.
And yep.
But if it's all debt, that includes mortgages. Mortgage debt is not necessarily bad. Why?
Right.
It's tied to an appreciating asset or
Yep.
supposedly an appreciating asset. Houses
Yep.
typically increase in value. So not all debt is bad. Now, credit card debt, if that continue now, I'm hearing that the credit card debt balances are hitting all-time highs, but we're not seeing any like that doesn't scare the market.
It's not making a dent in anything
It's not
yet.
making a dent in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the the formula for what could happen and for things to get ugly is increasing credit card debt and then increasing unemployment. You merge those together, then you get
Yep.
nastiness, right?
Yep.
You get
Yep.
losses to names like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Bank of America, Chase. But so far, the banks haven't really been reporting anything in that space where they're saying that we have to be scared of anything. So
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting, but I'm the market hasn't flinched.
Nope. Not even not even an eye.
No, hasn't flinched.
Yeah.
Hasn't flinched. Now, if you start coupling that with higher unemployment, then I think that that's when
Mm-hmm.
we start to see some issues.
Yep. But with that being said, y'all, Wale, you have anything going on next week that you, this week at least? Any advice going into Friday to keep an eye on?
Nah, I think one thing we didn't touch on was stock buybacks. So
Yes.
stock buybacks have hit in an annual high where companies have committed a record number of capital to buy back their stock. So what is a stock
Mhm.
buyback? Basically, stock buybacks is CFOs of companies going into the open market and buying their stock because they feel it's undervalued. I think Uber committed what $20 billion in stock buybacks.
$20 billion. Yep. So it's about
So
11% of his market cap. That's a lot of money.
so basically what that means is this. On days where a stock might be falling, the CFO might just start deploying cash and buying more stock because Uber was down what? Let me see. Uber closed yesterday. Oh, Uber hit a high of 90.96 today and then dipped to 86.37 and then closed at 89.22. That's probably the
Mhm.
CFO like
Buying up. Yep.
deploy.
Hmm.
So whenever you see stock buybacks, now the thing with stock buybacks, you don't know when the CFO is buying.
Right.
You
When
don't
they're
you
gonna
don't
buy it.
know.
Yep. Yep.
But it kind of gives the stock a floor that there will always be a market for someone buying their stock.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
Apple committed a ton of money in their one of their earnings reports. I think it was last year. And it was a ridiculous, but I think the record for buybacks. So that could be another thing that's fueling the market is, instead of paying a dividend, like, some companies do, companies just like, we just gonna buy back stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, stock buybacks, that has been fuel to the market because if you can, I think Disney was another one that announced a pretty $3 billion buyback or $2 billion buyback. So yeah, that's always a good thing for stocks, especially if
Yeah.
if a name is falling, you know that there's going to be buyers out there. Now, usually stocks that have buybacks or do buybacks, one of the key metrics you want to look at is free cash flow.
Hmm.
So companies that have robust free cash flow, those are the ones that tend to do buybacks because if you don't have
Yep.
any money left over at the end of the month, what are you going to use to buy back
But
stocks?
yeah, what you gonna do with it?
Yeah. So unless you start, taking out loans or, issuing debt to buy back stock, the MSTR model of getting loans to buy Bitcoin,
Yep. Yep.
which to me is a dangerous game, but what do I know?
The crazy thing also is like I don't know if you guys seen that Tesla's given Elon like 96 million shares or something like that. That's worth like 29 billion or something like it's crazy amount of money, man.
Yeah, he got a big compensation package.
Yeah. But there's I mean it's restricted, right? So there's conditions behind
Conditions,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Conditions behind it.
So yeah. So I hate sometimes when people when they report stuff like that and they don't tell you like this is not just they're not just giving it to him. He has to meet certain things. People are
Yeah,
like, oh, they just gave him all this money. And I was like,
nah,
wait,
nah.
wait, guys. Like,
And I
there's a
think the
reason for
last
it.
I think the last compensation package he got, he blew the metrics out the water.
Yeah, yep.
He earned that. So,
Mm-hmm.
what he's done for Tesla, I mean, I have to congratulate him because I mean, they were on the brink of, I think, almost bankruptcy not too long ago.
Yep,
Maybe
yep.
like,
And he
6 or 7
brought it
years
back.
ago.
He brought it
Brought it
back.
back. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when you're a CEO and they reward you for hitting your metrics, I mean, I can't get mad at that.
Yep, yep. And I think they're trying to help him out too, because remember he asked for like what $56 billion or something like that for
Something
in
crazy.
compensation.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
crazy.
I think the court basically tell him, hell no, man, this is no, you can't have all that. But the one of the conditions on here is like if that got reinstated, then they will cancel this $29 billion shares.
Mm.
So
Man, you know what business I keep looking at that is a terrible business, and I'm starting to feel like their business is actually just selling stock? Snapchat.
mm.
Snap, Snap.
snaps,
I think
snaps.
Snapchat is a Ponzi scheme. I think Snapchat's a Ponzi scheme. I think when you
People
look,
people still use Snapchat.
bruh,
I think they're
their
the king of filters. I would call them that.
their stock-based compensation like eats up. I don't think they've ever turned a profit since 2017.
No, I don't think
They're
so
almost
either.
10 years old.
Yep, it said damn, they dropped like 21% after a
Yeah,
weak quarter result showing slow revenue growth in over a year, worsened by competition from AI platforms and ad buying glitch. Oh wow.
they're a garbage business.
How did they have 159 million North American active users? That's crazy.
Children, teenagers
Yeah,
that don't
that's
have money
crazy.
to spend. And
Man,
my
then
thing is, if you want to be in the ad business, why wouldn't you buy Meta or Reddit?
yeah,
Like
they need to trim. They need to trim. They probably need to trim the fats and trying to figure out what direction to go to.
stock based. If you go look at their balance, go look at their stock based compensation. I mean, actually, I think I saw it yesterday. Let me see something real quick. They're in the business of selling stock. That's how they make money. They sell stock. That's why the people at the top will always make
I'm
money.
making money. Yeah.
Let me see. Payroll, other taxes related to look at this. 17 million in stock-based compensation in Q1, and then is it 9 million or 9 billion? I think 9 million. I don't know. In like stock, how does your stock-based compensation like this is ridiculous.
Somebody says Snapchat essentially just funnels cash from dumb investors to its executives. That's basically all they're doing. That's crazy.
Even Evan Spiegel, that's all he's living off of, stock-based compensation.
Yeah, I
They're a
mean,
terrible business. Terrible business.
that's crazy, man.
What was their
Well,
I what was their IPO price? The IPO price was like $17.
yeah, and then they dropped, and then they went up during COVID, and now they're back down.
And that at one point was my biggest options trade of all time.
Dang, you shorted that thing.
I shorted them. This was August 2017, I think after their first earnings
Yep,
report. Yeah.
that's crazy. Well, I'm gonna tell you, man, stay away from Snap for now. This is a broken business. This is
It's
what
a
we
broke
call a broken
that's
business.
what you call a broken business. That's what you call a broken business. There you go. There you go.
This is
Now,
a
I
good
don't know how
definition of
they
that.
got to $83
That's during
during
COVID.
COVID. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
everything went up. That's
everything
true.
was running during COVID.
Everything went up because
Everything.
money was so cheap.
Yep,
You could
everybody
borrow
was
money.
buying everything.
Yeah,
You
money
know.
was so cheap. But yeah, they went from $83 in 2021. They're a $7 stock now.
$7. They're probably heading down to that $4.82 low.
Sheesh.
So
Yeah, terrible, terrible business. Terrible
crazy,
business.
crazy. All right, yo. With that being said, this is a wrap for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Instagram. Please let people know that we are here helping people out. We have given a lot of good guidance, man. Like I'll keep every time I go look back and all the stuff that we kind of put together out there. It's like we give you guys a lot of great stuff. So please share, subscribe, ask other people to subscribe. Let's grow this channel. Let's grow the knowledge and stuff. But Wale, any last minute words before we close out?
Nope. I think
All right.
that's pretty much it for me.
All right.
We'll see
Well,
y'all Friday.
that's a wrap. We'll